Hey everyone, welcome to one more episode of the Requirements Engineering Podcast. Today we bring you a true expert. Her name is Barbara Carkenord to talk about everything of managing requirements in an agile environment. For those of you who don't know Barbara, she currently provides project management and business analysis consulting and training, helping companies improve their delivery of business value. Barbara is extremely passionate about enabling people and organizations to succeed through better communication, collaboration, and critical thinking. She has written books, articles, blogs, and training material aimed to help professionals enhance these skills that we're going to talk about. And last but not least, Barbara has helped define the analysis profession by volunteering with the IIBA organization for 19 years. This is an incredible episode because we really deep dive into many topics. The first one is the challenges that Barbara sees in organizations on how they handle projects and the requirements. The second topic is on how to implement a requirements engineering process if you don't have one, or how to refine one if you do have one. The third one is how to implement an agile methodology within a requirements engineering process. And finally, we touch on how to evaluate a great requirements management tool, the characteristics and features that you should be looking for when evaluating one. This is an incredible episode with really practical step-by-step knowledge that Barbara shares, and really useful, especially if you're currently looking to implement a requirements engineering process, or if you currently handle your requirements with Microsoft Office and Excel, or even using tools such as Miro, for example. So I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Please let us know what you think in the comments of this video. Subscribe to this podcast, and also subscribe to our member portal at visuresolutions.com/register to see more content like this one. So I really hope that you enjoy and learn in this episode as much as I did. Hey Barbara, how are you? Thanks for coming to the Requirements Engineering Podcast. Really excited to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Marcel. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're also here with Jeff, and pretty much before we get started into the conversation. Yeah, it might be lagging a little bit, but
I'm sorry, Marcelo. You cut out a little bit.
So yeah, you cut out, Marcel.
All right. So are you hearing me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So before we jump into the conversation, can you give us like a quick background of pretty much what you do, just so like the audience is really familiarized? If you could probably share some numbers and guide us like how you got introduced to the pretty much requirements engineering world, business analyst world.
Sure. Thank you. I started my career as a mainframe software developer, working for General Motors, working on manufacturing systems and assembly plant systems. And, over the course of my career, which has been pretty long at this point, I have done a lot of system design and then moved more into analysis, but always focused on requirements. So I've really been doing requirements pretty much my whole career. I've spent a bit of time doing project management, and a lot of project managers do requirements too, so I never really got away from that part of the work. And then have really focused for the last, I'd say, 20 years on specifically business analysis and requirements analysis in a lot of financial services companies, some hospitality companies, some healthcare companies. And what I learned is that a lot of those organizations and those industries have a lot of the same challenges around requirements. Requirements are a very complex thing to actually get your hands around and understand. So I think there's so much opportunity for us to do better with requirements, and people are constantly trying to find better ways to capture them and document them.
Yep, totally. Can you expand a little bit about this kind of challenges that you constantly see within companies? What are like the patterns that you usually see?
Sure. Well, the first thing is that most people that I work with who are trying to elicit and gather and document requirements don't have any tools. They are still using, Excel and Word, maybe some PowerPoint. Some teams use some graphic tools that are a little bit more sophisticated, like a Visio or a Miro board, but they're not requirements tools. They don't allow any of the requirements to be linked to other requirements. They don't allow any tracing. They don't do versioning. Everything is manual. So it's almost like if you think about in the manufacturing world, we're still building cars by hand. People doing requirements are still getting in there with tools and screwing on bolts and nuts, and there's no assembly line, there's no robotics, there's no help for what we're doing. And
they're really just lists.
Exactly. That is exactly what they are, Jeff. Or maybe a diagram. Maybe we do some process models, right, in some diagrams, but they're static diagrams. And every time the business changes, nobody goes back and updates those diagrams, so they get old really fast. People don't know where they are. Simple things like keeping track of all the files that people create. And, I've gone into companies and they're like, yeah, we think we did these diagrams a few years ago, but nobody knows where they are. So we start all over and do them again. It's just crazy stuff that is just a huge waste of time.
And do you think it's because they don't know that there are tools out there, or they're making do with what they've got?
Some of both of that, I think, Jeff. I don't think everybody is really aware of that there are a class of tools called requirements management tools.
Interesting.
And even, I work with a lot of project managers who don't have project management tools, which again, kind of is amazing to me.
Wow.
Yeah. And how do you not know that there are project management tools? Now, it's also, I think, there is a learning curve. We would be misleading people if we said that you can just pick up one of these tools and immediately start using it. I think people are so busy, they feel like they don't have the time to learn a new tool.
I think we lost her for a second, right? Yep. Barbara, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep. We lost you for a quick sec. Yeah.
I was saying that I think a lot of people feel like they don't have the time to learn a new tool. And so they know how to use Excel, and so that's what they just keep doing,
Wow.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Jeff, you wanted to add something?
No, I was trying to I understand because I talk to a lot of these people all the time, and I think it kind of goes to the point where they finally get to the point where everything just falls apart, and that's when they start saying there must be a tool out there or something, some piece of software. And it's very, it's very interesting how the whole process seems to flow, or that's this whole epiphany happens or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other thing, Jeff, that from working with clients is that most companies, at least a lot of companies in the areas where I'm at, don't have a good requirements management process. So even if you bring in a tool, they don't really know how to incorporate that into what they're doing because they don't have a process in place. And I think you guys might know better than I do, but I think this is especially a problem in the United States. We do not like to follow processes. I hear people, I went to a conference in the UK a few months ago, and all the BAs, the business analysts, were talking about following methodology or a process. And there's more structure, there's more, compliance. And we just don't see that as much in the United States as we do in some other countries. So, that doesn't help us either.
Yeah, and do you think there's anything around what people are learning in school, and are they not learning how to write requirements, or is this a skill that really needs to be taught very specifically? Do you have any feelings around that? Because I seem to see that a lot from customers that they know they need requirements. They have no
Hmm.
idea how
How to
to
write them.
elicit or how to
Right.
write a requirement. And it's only the people that have been deep in that system for a long time that really seem to get it.
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, are you
I,
seeing something similar?
I think, yes, I do, very much. I think some people learn some of the structured techniques, and they might learn them in school or they might learn them in a training class. But to your point, so many of the other people that they're working with, and specifically their managers, the stakeholders on the project, don't have any idea about those techniques or what the value is. They don't get a
Right.
lot of reinforcement that I should do this. It's going to, I want to show you this diagram. Well, nobody understands what this diagram is, so nobody values what work was done. And I also think that, there's still just this misconception, and I don't want to be negative, but, part of what happened with the Project Management Institute in the early PMBOK, and they still have it, they have one task called collect requirements. And it implied that you just go out and you ask a couple questions and you get all the requirements, and then you can do your project plan. And they just totally misled, I think, a lot of project managers into thinking that this requirements thing was just one of the little tasks that you do on your projects.
Yeah.
And the more complex, and the products that we're developing just keep getting more and more complex. And so that is only getting worse. I talked to tons of project managers who don't understand why their BA has to go out and have 5 meetings with a customer. Why didn't they? I thought you collected those requirements yesterday, And it's not that simple. So it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what a complex activity requirements analysis is, I think. I'm very involved with the IIBA, the International Institute of Business Analysis, and this is a big thing that we constantly are trying to educate people about, is the complexity, the challenges, the difficulty, and the value of having a good analyst, a requirements engineer or business analyst, who understands this stuff at a deep level. I actually like the requirements engineering title in some ways better than business analyst, because engineering is a clearly challenging, complex discipline, and requirements are the same way, very challenging, very complex. Maybe the IIBA, and there is an requirements engineering association, which the IIBA, works closely with, but we didn't use that term because in a lot of the industries, like financial services and insurance companies, that engineering word doesn't resonate with them. So the business analysis kind of task list or phrase or title seemed to resonate more, which is kind of how, we went in that direction. But there's definitely not an engineering focus, and they don't look upon the work of requirements as needing to be that detailed and that disciplined.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that I see, and maybe you have an opinion on this too, but project managers or management in general see sometimes that, okay, we have this idea for whatever product it is, and then the requirements people want to spend several months figuring out, okay, exactly what are we going to build, and they're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean, you need this much time? It's like there's this, push to make things happen fast, compared to, and it's a very interesting dichotomy between, making it happen fast, but then what did you just build? If you built something, did you build the right thing, or, do you see something similar for that within business analysts?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I remember one insurance company, I had a training company. We were training exclusively business analysis and primarily requirements. And we taught all the BAs at this insurance company all these different techniques because, you know, the BA BOK, the body of knowledge for business analysis has like 100 techniques in it now.
Wow.
But the BAs didn't understand that you don't have to use every technique on every project, and they were building those huge requirements documents. And so, yeah, there was a lot of pushback. And honestly, I truly believe that part of the reason that Agile came into being was a pushback on requirements documents.
I was just going to say that's exactly.
Absolutely. Developers hate reading them. They hate looking at them. They actually don't like being told specifically what to build or how to build it. And so that was, that really hurt the requirements industry for a long time, because here all these people were telling companies, you don't need requirements. You know, just put a developer in the room with the user and they'll build whatever you want. Now, everybody has figured out that doesn't work. Now we have this topic of quote unquote agile requirements, which are just requirements like they always were. But I do think that there were a whole bunch of factors that contributed to the fact that we just don't do this well. It's hard. It's really hard work. I do actually, though, Jeff, really like and appreciate a lot of the agile practices and a lot of the agile thinking. Because, again, like I was kind of beating up on, project management, but you can't collect all the requirements up front. You don't know everything that you're going to need to know ahead of time for a lot of projects.
Right.
And customers or users don't really always know what they want. I mean, if I'm building a mobile banking app and I've never done that before, I don't know exactly what my customers are going to respond to. So the idea of building a minimal viable product and figuring out what are the high priority features that we need and building those first, those are all really good things. So we've gotten a lot of benefit, I think, from a lot of the agile ideas. And we've also, I think, convinced them, and the Agile Alliance works closely with IIBA too, because IIBA now has some Agile Analyst certificates for people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because, and we've got a product owner certification too, because a lot of BAs do work in the product owner role. So there's a lot more recognition now that, we do need to have requirements. Requirements are really important, but we don't need to do all of them up front and try to get every single thing down, in those 3 or 4 month time periods.
I mean, is that kind of a where I think a lot of project managers and even some requirements engineers may think of this more as a waterfall, where you do all the requirements up front, and then you go and you build it, and then you go test it, and when in reality it is somewhat agile in that just because you gathered as much of these requirements up front, that's going to change, and there's going to be some churn within that those set of requirements. So
absolutely. I've never worked on a project in my career where the customer didn't start to see things and go, oh, now that I see that, what I'd really like it to do are these other 3 things, right? But I remember one of the projects I worked on early in my career, we built, the requirements management, the requirements document were 3 huge binders. We had to roll them in a cart down to the user, and they signed off. And sure enough, once they signed, and I know they didn't review them, I was not allowed by my management to vary from that at all. So we had to build exactly what we had. And when they started looking at it and they said, well, that's not exactly what we need, we said, well, you signed, this is what you're going to get. It's a crazy way of doing things, So I understand. And again, I think that's the positive thing about Agile, is it's really encouraging BAs to think, and I think really we have to be creative to try to break products into reusable increments. Is there something we can deliver early? And I find users fight that, but the more that we keep talking about it and, encouraging them, they're starting to see the value in that quick delivery. But you still need requirements for that.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
I think that's partially because of the the nature of software projects versus hardware and software type projects where
Yeah.
software is easy to iterate,
Right, right,
and the complexity of what people are trying to build is ramping up, is growing exponentially,
right,
and but so it's always better to, in most of those cases, to build what you call a minimal viable product, and then increment on top of whatever you're building, so
right,
adding additional requirements or whatever.
right, right.
Yeah,
And that lends itself to so much to reusing requirements.
exactly.
Because we build pieces, and then they're like building blocks, and if we build some basic pieces and then we build some more on top, we reuse those requirements. So it's a way better way to work, and the requirements are much smaller and shorter and more lightweight. So I think it's good in many ways. Even if you are building a product that you can't release, until a bigger piece is done, you could still build it in an agile way or in sprints.
It almost makes
Yep.
you
Yeah.
think about, or concentrate more on you know making them much more portable,
Right.
because as
Right.
if you're building a basic part of a program and then trying to increment on top of that, you need to make sure that that base piece is very flexible.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And the one of the principles of agile development is that they'll build that first version of the product, and then they'll build the second version, and there may be a third version, and they recognize that when we get to the third iteration or version, we might have to go back and redo some of the foundational stuff because we've learned some things.
Yeah.
Again, that's a reusable requirement. It's the same requirement. They're just going to build it technically in a different way, maybe to scale up and be able to handle more transactions, or maybe to add, more security, whatever the need is. So it's a great opportunity for the requirements engineers to capture that stuff and have it be reused.
Yep.
Same thing with
Barbara,
business
I have a
requirements.
quick question.
I think, sure.
Yep. Go ahead. I'll let you finish, and then I'll jump in.
I
No
was
worries.
just going to say, we focus a lot on business requirements. Core business requirement, for example, for an insurance company is to pay a claim, right? If you capture that in a way that is technology independent and describe all the things that have to happen to pay a claim, that requirement can be used over and over again. It was done on a mainframe, and then it was done in a client server, and now it's being done in an app, and next it'll be done in a voice recognition system. But it's the same need that, can be reused.
Exactly. So pretty much another popular term that has come across in the requirements world is about the hybrid methodology, specifically mixing up like Agile and Waterfall when talking about like product development. Can you expand on this pretty much and explain how you've seen this in companies and pretty much how they can implement this as well?
Sure. And that word can be used to mean all kinds of different things. I think the ideal use of it is recognizing that sometimes on a project there are some aspects of it that can be done agilely, but maybe some aspects of it that need to have a more traditional approach. For example, if I'm building some kind of mechanism that has a hardware component and a software component, the hardware might need to have traditional kind of plan-driven. We've got to diagram this out and figure out what the materials are, and kind of do the whole thing. Whereas the software component could be built in a more agile way and maybe released in different increments. The reality that I'm seeing is that everybody wants to say they're using Agile, and Agile transformations are very difficult. So companies are adopting a few Agile techniques or practices into their traditional waterfall approaches, and they're calling it hybrid, which it is. So, for example, a lot of traditional kind of teams started doing daily stand-ups. Everything else they do is still waterfall, still traditional, but they have daily stand-ups, so they're kind of calling themselves hybrid, which is great. I mean, I think daily stand-ups are a great idea, keeps the team informed about what's going on, improves collaboration, communication. So that's a good way. And I recommend that to teams a lot of times if they're trying to move towards Agile, but they don't have maybe management support to go all the way. So it moves them in that direction,
Yeah, makes total sense. And pretty much, I mean, a few minutes ago, you were talking about the issue that most of these companies that you come across with, they don't have a requirements engineering process or methodology in place. And specifically talking about Agile requirements, what type of process would you recommend implementing? Not sure if you have like something that you could walk us through. How does a typical process look like, and how can these companies implement it as well?
Well, I don't have a methodology, and you hear Scrum is the most popular Agile methodology. From a requirements perspective, there's a couple things that I always recommend. Let's say you're using Scrum, which is great, but before you start software development, you ought to analyze the business, and you ought to have business requirements. I mentioned the example of pay a claim, right? The business analysts and the users need to really understand what their core process is before you ask people to write software to support it. And one of the problems with jumping into Agile is there's this assumption that we know what we need the software to do. That's not always well documented in organizations. Different people might pay claims differently, or they've got an old system that they just follow the system and they don't really know what it does. So there's
come on, Barbara. It's never documented. It is never documented.
Rarely, right, yeah. And so before you start Agile, Agile is a product development approach. But before you have a product, you have to understand the need. And that's where we really see business analysts adding a lot of value to organizations, because they're saying, wait a minute, before we start building something, let's make sure we think about what we're building and why we're going to build it. And the other really important thing is to do business case analysis. Like, is this really a good idea? Is this something we should build? Because a lot of companies, they get an idea and they get all excited and they jump in and do it, and they haven't really thought through, is this going to be good for our bottom line, right? Is this actually going to save us money or make us money? Are customers going to buy it, or users going to use it? I'm amazed at how many people I talk to, they develop a software system and their users never use it because they don't like it. That kind of blows my mind too, but it happens. So there's a lot
Importantly,
of stuff.
did they learn from that, or do they not?
I know the business analysts do, but I don't know if management always does. But so there's a lot of upfront work that needs to happen before you just say, let's do Agile. If you know what you're trying to build, or even in Agile, if you don't know what you're trying to build, that's great, and you want to experiment. Agile's really good with experimentation and building prototypes and trying things out and seeing how they go. But again, you got to know kind of why you're doing it. What are we trying to achieve, and do we really understand who are the potential users or the customers? And that's where I think all of the analysis, and again, a lot of reusability up there with requirements that if an insurance company, again, for example, one of the companies I'm working with now, we're building a huge capability model so that we have all their business processes documented. So now if you come in and say, we want to change something, or one of the employees has an idea, we think we should do, make this different, we can pull up the process and say, okay, how's that going to impact us, right? Impact analysis is another great value of a requirements tool that most BAs don't have access to, but to be able to say, what are all the other things that are going to be impacted if we change this process? So there's a lot of that upfront work that just isn't always done. We're always so excited to get into the technology and start building things, And again, sometimes that's a good idea, but sometimes it's a little bit of forethought is better. I don't know if that
Talk
answers
about
your
wasting
question,
time.
so. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it does. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you were mentioning like a couple key characteristics of like great requirements tools, which is one, impact analysis, reusability. Which ones would you say are also key, especially when we're trying to have like an agile development as well, for this for people to evaluate.
Agile, another thing I really like about Agile is there's a lot of emphasis on using models and diagrams as opposed to words to build requirements. I'm very into visual diagrams and models, and so I love requirements tools that allow us to do those graphical kinds of things. And, again, to me, if I can draw a diagram and each box on it, I can literally double click on and go see what else it's related to, or write some details behind it, or have another diagram behind it. That kind of leveling of diagrams and of requirements is a level of sophistication that you will never do in Visio or, in a graphics tool. And developers, this is, going back to, developers don't like to read requirements, but they do like diagrams, and they respond to that. And those are great ways to communicate. One of the things in Agile, this is a challenge for you guys at Visure. A lot of Agile teams will get up at a whiteboard and start sketching stuff out, right? And what we've learned to do as analysts is we take a picture of it, right? Now we've got a requirement in a photograph, and at least we can store that somewhere, so we've got it. But wouldn't it be great if a tool could kind of read the whiteboard diagram? And I know there are some actually electronic whiteboards that can kind of scan that stuff, but build those components into a requirements tool, so that I draw it and then it becomes a real diagram and it's something that I could build on. So those kinds of things are really exciting to me. And then other really easy things, Marcella, I'm amazed at, are so helpful, and most teams don't have, is like a glossary with reusable terms. People in companies do not use consistent terminology.
Yeah.
It sounds like such a simple thing, but I can't tell you how many clients I've worked with. We just built a simple glossary, and people's eyes are opening going, oh, now I see why we're having communication challenges.
And more importantly, the definitions that go along with,
exactly. It's like, what do we mean by this, right? And what a great tool for onboarding new employees, or one of my clients recently was acquired by a larger company. They have a glossary that they can give to the company and say, this is how we use these terms, right? Now we have a common language, so that's really powerful. I like to even put my stakeholders into my requirements management tool with a little description of what they do and who they are and who they're related to. I mean, those are very important parts of requirements. There's just so many things that you can put into a shared repository and not lose them.
I mean, you see that in a lot of this came out of the DoD, where their standard, templates for, requirements specifications and things like that always had a term section, so you defined a lot of the terms that you were going to use within the document. So it made things, it seemed, heavy-handed, but it always clarified everything, because you can always point back and say, no, that's what that means. It's right there in the document.
and it was a lot of work when they first started, because you did everything by hand, right? But now it's so easy. If you have a glossary of terms and you can select, these are the 3 that are relevant to this, and just display them there, how much better it can be. But like I say, it was funny, I did an interview recently with one of the leaders of the IIBA in Brazil, and he said he didn't know anything about requirements management tools. He said, I don't understand why you think they're a good idea, and I was like,
wow.
Well, here's an example, right? And he was like, wow, that sounds really cool that I could reuse that, So it's just, awareness and again, the complexity. I just think that, we joke with that saying that it's not rocket science. Actually, I think requirements are rocket science. I think they're as complex as you can get, because you got human beings with all these different opinions, and then you've got businesses with all kinds of crazy policies and all kinds of regulations they have to follow. And you have to pull all that stuff together and to make some kind of sense out of it, and then ask a software developer to actually build something, or a hardware, designer to build something to support all these conflicting, requirements. Now you can add, we've got to have green requirements for environmentally friendly products. And, we've got to include diversity. And I mean, it just continues to get more
cybersecurity
cybersecurity. Right.
Yeah.
That's another thing, Jeff. IIBA has a cybersecurity analyst certificate now, because
wow.
Yeah, people that build cybersecurity don't often start out by analyzing what the need is. They just start building code. It's like, what is the problem? Somebody's got to analyze, where do most frauds occur? Where is the highest risk?
Yeah, we've actually seen it applied because a lot of the newer standards that are coming out around cybersecurity actually do kind of a threat or risk analysis and tie that back to requirements. So, what is the threat to your tools, right? Or to your product, whatever it is. And then how do we mitigate that? And that tends to be the one piece that, beyond requirements, it's, that little risk analysis piece that actually gets added in.
Well, risks, in my book, risks are a type of requirement. And that's another great thing that you need to trace, to the requirements, to the objectives, to the end, the product components, and then when a risk changes, wouldn't it be great if you could look at that and do impact analysis and say, here's all the things that we already tied to this,
Yep, exactly.
Just, analysts are really good at analyzing, and having everything connected together in one repository is like a mine. It's like the greatest resource that we could have for doing
like a mind map.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm a big advocate. I got my start actually in business analysis using requirements tools, case tools at the time they were called. But they allowed us to do diagrams and to actually generate software. And at the time, we were using COBOL code generators, right? That would actually build from the requrequirements. Yeah.
You're taking me back, Barbara. I learned COBOL, so.
That was a great set of tools, and they died. Probably we can muse about many reasons, but it's really sad, because when you generate code from requirements, wow.
Yeah.
That's got true traceability. But systems are a lot more complex now than they were when we had one big mainframe that everything ran on. It's a little bit more complicated now.
Yeah. And also, like, one of the challenges we do come across is like having people, like, first, obviously not having a tool process in place, but also if they do, is writing requirements right. So can you quickly or briefly like touch about these points? What do you really come across when writing requirements, and what recommendations could you have for people listening as well?
I advocate for writing small requirements broken into components. So, for example, there are data elements in almost every system that you look at, and I like to identify each data element almost like a glossary, where I define what it is, how it's used, what does it look like, all the details around the information. And then there are process components. And then there are business rules or policies that guide things. And then there are the stakeholders or the users. And build all those components and then link them all together. And that's, again, you can see why I love a requirements repository, because you can't do that in an Excel spreadsheet. You know, I mean, you just can't. So most analysts who don't have a tool are trying to write the system shell statements, which I hate, and they describe something where they have to mention the user and a data element and some processes and some business. They have to put all this stuff together instead of decomposing it into the actual building blocks of what has to be there. If you identify a data element like customer number, it's used everywhere. Why do you have to rewrite it every time you want to use it in a requirement? You know, if you had it in a tool, you just link to it. A claim, perfectly good example, right? A claim has certain characteristics, and it's referred to all the time in insurance companies. But every time somebody writes requirements, they kind of have to start over because they don't have a place to easily reuse it. And a claim is made up of a bunch of data elements and a bunch of processes. And again, if you get those components broken down, then it's like putting together. And I heard, I was involved with information engineering when we used the case tools. And James Martin was one of the big advocates for that. He said, you should be able to assemble a requirements package, not write one, right? You ought to be able to
it's like Lego.
Exactly. Pick the data and the processes and the rules and put them all together and say, here's what I need. And
that's a good view. Yeah.
It is. And, you know, I was exposed to that, Jeff, like, you know, back in 1990. And surely I thought by now we would have all figured out how to do that. But we haven't.
Oh, you're such a dreamer, Barbara.
Still working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is where we need to still, you know, strive for. Because right now I believe that it takes a lot more time to do analysis and requirements than it does to code or build. So we're the bottleneck. And, you know, we're the bottleneck because we have no tools. We're basically doing everything manually. And, you know, if organizations want to get things done more quickly, they need to take that part of the life cycle and say, hey, we need to bolster this. We need to give these people some resources to be able to do this. Which is a whole nother topic, but I think too, Jeff, you and I have talked about this, that in the past, business analysts or maybe requirements people have been looked at as simply meeting recorders. Like their list, collect those requirements, just write them all down and you'll be done, right? So a person who could just listen and write things down wasn't well paid and definitely didn't need an expensive tool to support their work. Yeah. Whereas as we continue to elevate the role of the business analyst and companies recognize how valuable business analysts are, salaries have gone up significantly. And the higher paid we are, the more valuable we are, the more a tool can be justified in a company. Because, hey, if you're paying this analyst $100,000 a year and we can save a few hours of their time, that's worth a lot of money to us now. So that's the optimistic way I think we're going to start to see more tools be available. And then, you know, we at the IABA, we have to keep encouraging BAs to ask for tools. Sometimes they don't even ask their managers. They just think, oh, we'll never get them. Well, you know, you got to ask if you want to.
I tell my kids the same thing. You don't ask, you're not getting it.
That's right. Yeah. And you got to have a good reason, right? I mean, it is kind of like the kids. Yeah. Well, why do you need it? What are you going to do with it? You know, what's the purpose?
Yep.
And so that's what we have to keep encouraging BAs to do, is to ask for that kind of help.
Yeah, and I think they need to understand what is, you know, the answer to those questions. It's like, what's it going to do for you? You know, how are you going to use it? And and I think that, you know, that's probably incumbent on us too to provide those types of answers. Like these are the things
seen a clear ROI.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We ought to be able to do a really easy business case. And I can tell you, I think it's a very easy business case because the amount of time, and that's where I always focus, is the amount of time that you can save for the analysts or requirements engineers at the salaries that they're making. A tool pays for itself very quickly. And you know, I think in the past too, we got kind of caught up with like, oh, it'll allow us to build better quality requirements. Well, there's no CEO in the world that cares if we have better quality requirements, right? They want to see products got to go out the door. So instead of saying, you know, we're going to write better quality requirements, we got to say we can build products faster. You know, we're going to save time. We can get this done faster. And, you know, the repeatability just increases the productivity. Now, what do they say, like 10 times? If you can reuse something, you can increase your productivity 10 times.
Wow.
So, you know, it really isn't that hard to cost justify it. I think, Jeff, the other challenge is just that fear and learning curve, and, you know, it's change, right? Bringing in a product, and somebody's got to administer it, someone's got to learn it, you know, a bunch of people have to kind of buy into it. It's just like anything else, it takes some time to get that change.
Yeah, I've seen that, you know, no matter what type of product it is, it's
Right.
always the same. Yeah.
Right. I'm the same way. I have to, I'm in the process of getting a new PC, and I'm kind of dreading it because I just know I'm going to have to learn some new things. I'm going to have a new version of Windows. I'm going to have to reset up all my software. You know, things are going to be different, and it always slows you down for a little while at the beginning.
If you're going to do that, Barbara, just go ahead and get a Mac. You'll be.
Oh, I know. I wish I could.
And then you can do both.
I've actually, I'm here in Spain, so I've actually ordered a PC from the Spanish Lenovo company. And I understand I'm going to get a Spanish keyboard, so I'm going to learn how to use that. But fortunately, they're going to install an English version of Windows, so hopefully I'll be able to find my way around there. But you know, change is it's hard.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental, I think, thing that slows us down in adopting these methods. That's why we still use Excel, right, Marcelo?
For sure. All right. So, unfortunately, we're getting to the end of the interview. I think it was a great conversation. I'm sure people learn a lot, but not sure if you guys want to add anything else, Jeff, Barbara.
No, I appreciate your time, Barbara. I think this has been. It's always good getting this kind of perspective from people, you know, that have been around. And, you know, I say that nicely.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Because I've been around myself. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of eye-opening, you know, bits of information that I think people can take from this and say, oh, okay, now I think I have a better way of doing things.
Yeah, and I would just encourage anyone who is listening, who works with requirements at all, to go ahead and, you know, think a little bit about how could your work be more efficient, because it really does. I think thinking about how you could change the way you do things and how you could spend less time chasing files and finding things that maybe somebody did 5 years ago, and those kinds of things are just a big waste of time. You don't have to be doing that. There are options. So that's my parting thought.
All right, so we have two final questions. The first one is, in your opinion, what makes a successful project from an unsuccessful one?
Does somebody use the product that was created? You know, it doesn't matter how much it cost, how long it took, how did we get there, how many people are involved. The bottom line is, if we build something and people use it and get value from it, then, you know, we've built something, I think, worthwhile. If you're obviously in a for-profit company, you would like for it to be something that increases your revenue or decreases your costs. But even now, if it, you know, helps the environment or shares information, if people use it, I think it's success.
Yep. Totally. Awesome. And where can people find more about you?
I have a website. It's www.carkenord.com. Not an easy last name, but I am happy to have got a blog there and happy to answer questions for anybody that has them. I'm also on the board of directors of IIBA and would love to encourage people to get familiar with our association and possibly consider joining, because we have 30,000 people talking about requirements all the time. So this is what we do.
Awesome. All right. I'll make sure we link it up in the description of this episode. So really appreciate the time, Barbara.
Thank you. Good
Thanks,
to talk
Barb.
with you guys. Thanks.